Welcome to Conscious Media presents For Your Information. I always thank my producer, Jim Alexander, for taking the time out of his busy schedule to produce this show for all of you. The date today is October the 23rd, 2013, and we are now 13 days from the November 5th election. And any of you who have been watching my TV shows over the last 10 years, first let me say, those of you who have discovered the show, this show is not new. So I ran into someone in Roseline that said, I don't see your shows anymore. People who have DirecTV and who don't have Time Warner cannot get media bridges because DirecTV doesn't cover this independent media station. So sometimes people will say they don't see my shows as if I haven't been doing them. We do them every Wednesday, and today is October the 23rd, 2013, and we want to thank right now all of you who have continued to watch these shows and educate yourself on what is happening in Cincinnati and what is happening at the state level and what is happening at the federal level. But we focus the majority of our attention on what is happening right in your backyard, because politics are local. Those of you who've been watching the show, you could actually finish that sentence. Politics are local. Politics 101 shares with us that what the parties want to do is keep you at home during the local elections, because that's ultimately where all the power is and what controls what ultimately happens on the state and federal level. 13 days away from the most important election. Who will be the next mayor of the city of Cincinnati, and who will be elected? What 9 people will be elected to city council? Now, we're now moving into those 13 days. We call this the silly period. The silly period in politics. Because you will hear all of the different narratives that people will try to put out there and say to confuse you and get your eye off of the ball. Now, we see that in sports all the time. We try to, some on the basketball court, players try to get in the heads of the people that they're playing against. So instead of playing the game, they end up playing themselves. And they end up losing the basketball game. Because instead of focusing on scoring, they're focused on some argument or some push that's insignificant to the game. Now they're distracted. The coach is on the sideline yelling, saying, "You're distracted. You got to hit those free throws. You got to focus on the fundamentals. In the last 2 minutes of the game, we need good defense. We need free throws, 3 free throws to be made. Remember when we were practicing?" I'm just like the coach. The coach is talking to the team on the court. Remember all of the practicing that we did. Now it's time for you to hit those free throws, those clutch shots. That's where we are now in the election, where I need you out there to remain focused on the parking deal, to remain focused that Councilmember Chris Silbach voted no on the deal, and 1 second later he voted yes on emergency, which ultimately blocked you, the voter, from actually voting on the parking deal. That was a huge, huge blow and implication to the citizens of Cincinnati. And the message that Councilman Silbach was sending is, I don't believe you have the right to vote on the parking deal. But now he's asking you, as he's up for re-election, for your vote. Now, they don't want you focused on the streetcar. Notice how the candidates who are out here, who've been down on City Hall, those of you who've been watching City Council meetings, they've been talking big stuff on the floor of council. I support the streetcar. The streetcar supporters come into the chambers. They own property on the line. They put their businesses on the proposed line. You got speculators who've been buying property downtown. Those are the people that come to the chambers and say they want a streetcar. Because the majority of neighborhoods, the other 50 neighborhoods, the streetcar is never coming to their neighborhoods. The only thing the other 50 neighborhoods are experiencing is paying for the streetcar. That's what you're doing. And the candidates want you distracted on all kind of other nonsense so they don't have to talk about the streetcar. In politics, we call it running out the clock. In sports, we call it running out the clock. They come together. They've got 13 days left. Nobody wants to talk about the streetcar, and nobody wants to talk about the parking deal. They don't want to talk about the $130,000 portaloos that they have on the agenda to put toilets down on the streetcar line. That will cost us $1 million a year. They put enough of them down there for us to keep maintaining. You don't hear anybody talking about the portaloos. What happened to the portaloos? We don't hear them talking about the atrium. They don't want to talk about that $4.4 million atrium that they voted on and passed. No discussion about that. They don't want to talk about raising your property taxes, which is what they did. They don't want to talk about the trash fee, and they don't want to talk about the responsible bidder ordinance passed on May the 1st. What they want to talk about is calling John Cranley as an example, a person that I support for mayor and have been supporting him for 2 years. This isn't new. I've been out supporting John Cranley from the beginning. Now what you have are the streetcar supporters. Listen to what I'm sharing with you. Listen to this. Because this is, they want to get in your head and distract you. They're calling John Cranley a Tea Party member. They want you thinking that Cranley in some way is now in the Tea Party. That is such a low level of thinking. And anyone, and I've said this before, who thinks that Cranley is in the Tea Party or that I'm in the Tea Party, that either one of us are in the Tea Party, you've lost your minds. You're those kinds of people that are just easily influenced. Anybody can say anything to you at any time and then you believe it. So you got people, quote, on the buzz. But this is, some of you might not know what the buzz is. This is the black radio station here in Cincinnati. They've been out telling you the narrative that John Cranley's in the Tea Party, that I'm a Tea Party member, and at the same time, they supported the stadium deal. I'm talking about the radio hosts on the black radio stations. They supported the stadium deal. They supported red light cameras. They supported the sale of our water. They supported the streetcar. They supported the parking deal. The talk show hosts haven't seen a deal they didn't like. And then you got a guy like Smitherman who just focuses on the facts. And it doesn't matter where the facts lead me. I focus on the facts. Now, today, on October the 23rd, listen closely. These are facts, not fiction. Roxanne Qualls has been selling property on the streetcar line. Fact. Hold on right now to your sofa. The facts came out on October the 22nd. The story broke that Roxanne Qualls, during the whole time, she's been down selling property on the streetcar line. Even when this show, Conscious Media, talked about the council spending another $17 million more on the streetcar, which of course I voted no on. Roxanne Qualls voted yes for the $17 million, and on the same day went and closed on a property on the streetcar line. I'm going to say that one more time because I want you to go get somebody and bring them into the room and say, Smitherman is saying something here. When Conscious Media produced a show discussing the $17 million more that council was saying they needed to spend on the streetcar line, the vice mayor and chair of budget and finance is Roxanne Qualls. When she teed up the $17 million more and voted yes on it in budget and finance, and then voted yes on it on the floor of council, the exact same day she went and closed on a property as a real estate agent that she sold on the same streetcar line. Now on WCPO, which is a website for Channel 9, a reporter by the name of Kevin Osborne has now broken the story. And you have streetcar supporters and quote bloggers that are attacking Kevin Osborne for just giving the community the facts. That Qualls has profited at a minimum of $87,000 and maybe as much as $180,000 in commissions on the streetcar line. In the street, we call that getting paid. And Roxanne had the nerve to run a TV commercial 2 months ago that all of you saw on John Cranley talking about a deal on the west side called the Incline, where she asserted that John wasn't ethical. What John did was actually the right thing to do. He sought an ethics opinion from the Ethics Commission in the state of Ohio, and they wrote him and said, you must choose. You stay on council or do the development. He left council. A year to a year and a half later, Qualls is the chair of budget and finance. She actually teed up a deal to support the Incline project, voted for the deal. It went 9-0. And now she ran a TV ad in the primary saying that a deal that she defined as unethical was a deal that she supported. But she didn't tell you she voted for it. Now, the truth is coming out. That while she was running those commercials, she was selling property on the streetcar line and never sought a legal opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission. She didn't do what John did. She just said, I'm going to go get paid. Because Roxanne believes there's no conflict of interest, therefore there must not be a conflict of interest. That is at the height of her own personal arrogance. And it's why the public doesn't trust the politician. Because they're in the back room padding their own pockets. They're setting up personal deals for themselves. And even if the Ohio Ethics Commission would say that, you know, Roxanne, it doesn't sound right. Listen to what I'm about to say. You're the chair of budget and finance, and you also are selling property on a streetcar line that you are deciding where the route is of the streetcar. I can't imagine them saying it's okay for you to sell property on that line, but let's say that they say it's okay. If you are an ethical person, you avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. And it shows poor judgment on her part, in her leadership, that she would engage in selling property and line her own pockets financially. So let me dig down. You got to hear this detail. You got to understand, because we're going to make sure that this TV show gets up so you can see it before you vote, so you can be really informed. Think about this. I want you to hear what I'm about to say. When Qualls got caught yesterday on the 22nd of October, when the story hit, she requested an opinion from the city lawyers. The city lawyer, his name is John Kirk. So she wrote him and said, hey, look, there's this article out here saying that I've been selling property on the streetcar line. That's true. She can't argue those facts. This is Roxanne Qualls. But I need you to give me an opinion today saying that it's okay. And guess what John Kirk did on October the 22nd? Today is October the 23rd. On the same day, here's what he wrote. Vice Mayor Qualls, listen. On a minimum of 2 prior occasions, you have sought opinions from the law department regarding your personal and professional interest in property near the streetcar route. We have also provided a copy of an opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission dated May the 28th, 2010, which addresses interests related to streetcar votes. We have advised that Ohio ethics laws and current opinions of the Ohio Ethics Commission do not preclude you from participating in deliberation and from voting on streetcar-related matters. Now, this is the city lawyer. This is a person that we pay. This is our employee. We are the board of directors, and we're asking, this is what Qualls is doing, she's asking her employee what he thinks about her selling property on the streetcar line. Kind of a precarious situation for an employee who's making $189,000 a year, John Kirk, while she's a candidate running for mayor for the city, and from his perspective might win, and now he's asking her on a day that she needs him to put something in writing, a get out of jail free note. Let me read over. I think you're smart enough to get this. He goes on to say, the Ohio Revised Code section 102.03 prohibits a city council member from using her official authority or influence to provide a definite and particular pecuniary benefit which would impair her objectivity or independence of judgment in making official decisions. Now, he didn't say she was the chair of Budget and Finance there. I mean, I would think being the board's chair of deciding the route and the money would say that that's not objective. But go on. A council member may participate, and in the law, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a stockbroker, but I can tell you, when lawyers write the word may, you should be ducking. May is broad. A council member may participate or vote on general legislation which provides a uniform benefit to all citizens within a city or a large portion thereof. He goes on. It is my understanding that as a real estate agent, you provided services to facilitate arm's length transactions between private parties. I want to give you the next fact. The guy who was hired to build the streetcar bought almost a $400,000 condo from Roxanne Quarles. And then, of course, she got a commission. Your personal compensation is between 1 and 2% on sales. Why would the lawyer write that? Why is Kurt putting that sentence in there? As if he knows. Well, I guess now Kurt is saying he's monitoring Quarles' personal business outside of City Hall, and he knows that her commission is 1 or 2%. Why would he write that sentence? That's because he's trying to cover her behind. These transactions do not include seeking direct benefits from the city from your clients or yourself. This is what Kurt is writing. As a real estate agent, you are not precluded, per se, in participating in city matters which may ultimately impact property values in the city or the region. The Ethics Commission has concluded that streetcar is public infrastructure improvement that provides a general and uniform benefit to the residents, workers, and business owners in Cincinnati. Based upon that conclusion, the Ohio Ethics Commission opined that in the absence of a direct benefit, council members may vote on streetcar matters. Maybe our lawyer missed the fact that Quarles got commissions directly to her and her husband. He's saying, based upon that conclusion, the Ohio Ethics Commission, which, by the way, he is not a member nor has no authority to say what the Ohio Ethics Commission's opinion would be about these transactions. He's just talking out of the side of his neck. This is our employee. Some of you out there, do you know this is just like any employee working for your organization, writing their opinion about what the real organization, the Ohio Ethics Commission, might think about Roxanne Quarles, who has now been busted. When I was a little kid, we called it booty busted, selling property on a streetcar line that she was actually having the knowledge about where the streetcar was going and funding it with more money. The relatively small commission interest and the speculative nature of any benefit that a particular vote may have on regional property values make it unlikely that the Ohio Ethics Commission would find a direct benefit. Let me read that. The relatively small commissions. Why? That's another interesting set of words. Why is he placing value on these relatively small commissions? I want to suggest that most citizens in Cincinnati making $40,000, $50,000 a year, feeding 2 and 3 kids, and many below that number would believe that an $87,000 commission to $180,000 is a lot of damn money. But because Kurt is making $189,000 a year himself, very highly compensated employee for the city, he writes a sentence, the relatively small commission interest. I want you on your couch to ask yourself, is $100,000 in commission small to you? Do you think that's relatively small? I would say that there are many families in our city that can eat for 5 years on $100,000. They're not making $20,000 a year, and you got a lawyer writing an opinion saying that a relatively small commission interest is $80,000, $85,000, $87,000, $180,000 that she made. Now listen to this sentence. Here's the paragraph that when Roxanne Qualls yesterday on the 22nd called a press conference, she's trying to clean it up. This issue is spiraling out of control. Even some of her marginal supporters are saying, you know, this doesn't look good to me. This isn't right. Listen to this last paragraph. As always, the law department is willing to seek a formal opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission. I'm going to read that again. John Kerp writes, as always, Roxanne, the law department is willing to seek a formal opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission. We work closely with the Ohio Ethics Commission staff to ensure consistency with our respective opinions, are willing to do so in this instance. So in the last paragraph, he writes his own get out of jail free card. And he says, you know what, I said all that stuff up in there, Roxanne. Your employee, I said all of that. But at the last part, if you'd like me to write the Ohio Ethics Commission directly and ask them whether you selling property on the streetcar line is a conflict of interest, I certainly will do so. There wasn't a follow-up email from Qualls asking him to follow through and submit that documentation and ask for an advisory opinion on whether her selling property on the streetcar line was ethical or not. And the reason is that Roxanne Qualls doesn't care. And there are some of her core supporters that it doesn't matter what Roxanne Qualls does. They'll call everybody else unethical. They'll call everybody else non-progressive because we don't support the streetcar, because it's something we cannot afford. But they will never call her out for now her double standard and her ethical violations. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that her selling property on the streetcar line is wrong. Now, what is interesting about today is on October the 23rd, the city of Detroit is going into bankruptcy court. And over the next 5 days, the judge is going to rule whether Detroit can file bankruptcy. They will render that decision between now and the election. Between now and the election. Look at what God is doing. We're 13 days out of the election, and 4 hours away from the city of Cincinnati is Detroit, Michigan, who has filed bankruptcy, and at the heart of it are people who did development projects that made no sense, that their eye was not on the ball on basic services and keeping taxes low to populate the city, and they were underfunding their pension every single year, and now they are $18 billion in the hole. And now Detroit, Michigan, the largest municipality in the history of the world, is filing bankruptcy 4 hours away. And we have an $870 million unfunded liability in our pension right now. And we have a structurally imbalanced budget, and we have a $15 to $20 million deficit 2014, 2015, and 2016. We aren't Detroit yet, but we're selling our assets like the parking. And we are marching every day with the Moody's downgrade, towards bankruptcy. And I just thought it was ironic when I woke up on October 23rd and the lead story was the city of Detroit goes to bankruptcy court. I'm going to ask my producer to hand me one of my pieces of literature. I'm going to read what's on my literature. And this has been on my every piece of literature that I've been sending out across the city has said this. So we're talking about the last 6 months. This has not changed. Listen to this. And I've read it before. It's almost like opening up a fortune cookie on October the 23rd. Cincinnati City Council is in need of basic financial common sense. This is on my literature that's going out across the city. We cannot afford a streetcar and the parking deal is bad for Cincinnati. Stockton, California and Detroit, Michigan just filed bankruptcy, and Cincinnati will follow if we elect a city council for 4 years that continues to spend and sell our future. This is not rocket science, but the citizens in Detroit that voted every year, those same members of council, the same mayor, into Detroit leadership are responsible for the outcome of the bankruptcy. So why did I just say that paragraph? Because who you elect to city council in your local government is not my responsibility. Conscious Media, my producer Jim Alexander, we're here just trying to raise your consciousness, and just like the last show, you're in bed, some of you, you're politically asleep, and we're shaking the bed saying, please wake up. Make sure that you go and vote. And don't vote in the same team that has been running things. Oh, I like that person. I like their name. Oh, that sounds good. And then get mad when we end up like Detroit. Because those two things aren't connected. In your mind, you can't say, I'm voting for the same people, and I'm mad that we end up in the same result. That's craziness. You have to look at your ballot and say, you know what? I need to consider not voting for the same people that are currently on city council. I need to look at considering fielding a different team, a different majority. It's one of the reasons I've been here saying to you, I like Amy Murray out of Hyde Park. I'm an independent. I live in North Avondale. Amy Murray lives in Hyde Park. She's one of 21 candidates running for city council, and I like her. I also like Angela Beeman. Angela Beeman is an independent. Her profession is a financial planner, and I like Angela Beeman. I think that when it comes down to the votes of yes and no, I don't care about what they say. When it comes down to the yes or no votes, I believe that Angela Beeman, more times than not, will be on the right side of the vote. That's why I support her. Now, I'm trying to identify people that are not on council for you to vote for. You have to decide which incumbents that you want to re-elect. I've asked you and continue to ask you for your vote for Smitherman. But you're going to have to decide which other incumbents down there deserve to return. I'm trying to identify who I think would be good replacements. That's why I'm not spending a lot of time talking about the incumbents. I like Charlie Winburn. We work great together. That's true. And I think his voting record is good. But you have to decide which of the 8 incumbents, even 9 if you include Roxanne Qualls, because she can't return to council because she's running for mayor. But you have to decide. I'm looking at those people who are running for office who are not currently on council. And my fear is that many of you will walk to the polls like lambs, the silence of the lambs. And that you will march in and you will take a ballot that somebody else thought of for all kinds of different agendas and suggest strongly, just vote right down this sample ballot. And you don't get, and many of us don't understand, that you're voting for the thieves in the temple. I mean, they're literally going to hand you a ballot and strongly suggest that you vote for the same set of thieves that are currently in the temple. And the silent lambs all across the city will march in and take those sample ballots with no thought, because they have done no homework. They don't know who they're going to vote for or what they're going to vote for when they come to the ballot. There's no critical thought that they put into voting. I'm just going to show up and vote and walk out with my little red thing saying I voted today and did something. When all you did was go in and put the thieves in the temple back in the office. Wow. And go home to your day and tell your children, I voted today. I went and I voted for Roxanne Qualls, who's been buying property on the streetcar line where she's been directing your tax dollars, but now augmenting her personal gain, lining her own pockets. But because you're not dialed in, or because you heard somebody on the buzz, on 12:30 a.m. the buzz, or any of the radio stations, whether it's 700, whether it's 550, suggest something to you, you don't even think, and you walk in and you vote for the thieves that are in the temple. And what's so intriguing about the sample ballot followers, who vote for the thieves in the temple, the next morning they wake up and they complain and say, I don't understand how the thieves got reelected, when actually they voted for them. That's so interesting to me. What's also interesting are those of you who are registered to vote and say you're too busy to even show up and cast a vote, but then have an opinion about the thieves that are in the temple. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know a lot about the Bible, but I tell you, I know there's a story about Jesus showing up to the temple and turning everything over because the thieves were in the temple. Now, I'm just sharing with you that we've had a mayor for the last 8 years flying all over the country, first class, riding in limousines. Is that what you want at City Hall? Now, some of us in our community are caught up, black and white and Latino, are caught up in race. not me. I'm focused on my pocketbook and your pocketbook, which is green. It doesn't matter to me whether the candidate is straight. Doesn't matter to me whether the candidate is gay. Doesn't matter whether they're black or white or Latino or Asian. It doesn't matter. All of those things are completely irrelevant when you're talking about representation. Do you think that's what you've been getting over the last 8 years? Representation? And what's so bizarre about it is you're listening to radio stations and literally driving over potholes and then believing that what they're telling you as your tire is being blown out, that what they're saying is true and good for you. Wow. Many of you will drive to the poll through potholes and vote for the same thieves that are in the temple. And drive back out from the poll and rock over all of the potholes as you go home and then say you've done something today. And then wonder why your potholes are filled. What we should be thinking about on November 5th is a political revolution. We should be talking about throwing people out of office, changing up the game, shaking folks down to their underwear politically. So strong that Detroit, Michigan starts talking about Cincinnati because they say, wow, Cincinnati decided on November the 5th that they didn't want to be the next Detroit, that they didn't want to go bankrupt. And what they did is they woke up and said, we're going to elect a totally different council. We're going to put in a different mayor. They decided to not put in a mayor like in Detroit, who's serving 28 years in prison. They decided that they wanted to clean house in Cincinnati. They wanted to hit a reset button. That will be the story if we do what we're supposed to do. Just because somebody shows up to your church doesn't mean you should vote for them. We're all caught up in things that are meaningless. And I said to you before, I have a record. So people are going to say whatever they want to say about me as I march towards November the 5th. They're going to say whatever they want to say. And I'm not going to defend all of that craziness. You're going to have to decide. You're going to have to wake up and decide who you want down there representing you. You're going to have to decide. And at the end of the day, if you field the same team and the same thieves in the temple, then don't be surprised when they steal. Because that's what thieves do. Thieves steal. You elect a core group of thieves, why would you expect them not to steal? That's what they do. They line their own pockets. Now let me give you some facts. There's a group called Cincinnati for Progress. Team, will somebody hand me that literature that was put in the mail? Will somebody bring that to me? There's a piece of literature that Cincinnatians for Progress put out called Cincinnati for Progress. My team is going to hand this to me. All right, now I want you all to see this piece of literature that I have in my hand. This literature hit mailboxes last week around the 19th, the 17th, the 16th of October. Let's go through it. On the front of it, it says, excuse me, Cincinnatians for Progress. Then it says, paid for by Cincinnatians for Progress, Jenny Kessler, Treasurer, 2055 Reading Road, Suite 230. Everybody with me so far? That's who paid for the literature that I have in my hand. But guess whose PAC this is? And we've talked about this. This literature hit last week. This is a political action committee called Cincinnatians for Progress. And guess who the chair of Cincinnatians for Progress are? Number one, Mark Mallory. So when you get a piece of lit like this, this is really literature from who? Fill in the blank. Mark Mallory. Number two, Roxanne Qualls. Look it up. They are the chair people for Citizens for Progress. Number three, Rob Richardson. Ooh, the political mafia of the connection between all three of these characters, right? You got the union guy who's only interested in building the streetcar and doesn't care about what it does to the budget or your streets. He's the African American face that is selling to you that a streetcar that is not coming to your neighborhood anytime soon, but he wants you to pay for it, is good for you. Then you've got Qualls, who now we know is a realtor who's selling property on the streetcar line downtown, and her interest is clearly in her getting commissions and getting paid. Then number three, we've got Mark Mallory, who wants his legacy to be the streetcar. So he can say after 8 years, what I did for you, Cincinnati, is I brought you a streetcar. They then come up with a piece of lit last week, and they put the President of the United States of America's family on the front of the lit. As if President Barack Obama is endorsing a streetcar in downtown Cincinnati, 3.5 miles for $150 million that the Vice Mayor of the City of Cincinnati and Chair of Budget and Finance is selling real estate and lining her own pockets. And guess what? They didn't send this to everybody. They targeted where they thought African Americans lived and voted. That's where they sent this lit. Because they want you to believe that President Barack Obama and his 2 daughters and his beautiful wife are all now endorsing the choo-choo train in downtown Cincinnati, when the political action committee that was created called Cincinnatians for Progress, the chair people are Mallory, Qualls, and Rob Richardson. And they will say anything and do anything for them to get what they want. And what they'll do is they will play the black community. If you think they care about black people and where we are politically, when they send this kind of nonsense into your house, knowing that the majority of African Americans have been polled and are against the streetcar and are against the parking deal. But what they want to do is give you permission. Follow me. Listen to this sentence closely. Politics 101. They want to appeal to your emotion and get African Americans to have permission to vote for those on council currently, black and white, that support the choo-choo train. So what they're trying to connect is President Obama supports the streetcar, so it's okay for you to vote for candidates in the local election who also support the streetcar. And I'm here to tell you that President Barack Obama doesn't give a damn about that 3.5-mile choo-choo train. As a matter of fact, he just came out of a 17-day government shutdown. Something tells me that he's right now focused on health care reform and getting that website up and going. He's not thinking about downtown Cincinnati and a 3.5-mile choo-choo train. The only thing they left out in the picture was their dog. They could have gotten this image off of a cereal box. Do you realize that? They could have gotten this image off of a Cheerio cereal box. But they think you are that dumb that they would send this trash into your house. But that's what they do. And I want to ask you to give us a call at 242-5400. I should say that number frequently, 242-5400. Call us. Come by, get your yard sign. Get ready to vote. Do not vote for 9 people. Vote for 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 people. You want to undervote so that you can pick the majority that you want to lead the city. What we would say is shield your votes. And the next 13 days are going to be silly, silly politics. Silly politics. I just showed you a piece of literature that they sent last week out suggesting that President Barack Obama endorses the streetcar. Wow. Wow. Silence is a beautiful art form. Because what we want you to do at Conscious Media is to think. I've had some people walk up to me and say 9X. That means that you understand that you don't have to vote for 9 people for city council. And people have been saying that. I like it. Walk up to me and say, Smitherman, 9X. That means that you know and you're conscious. You're not out here taking sample ballots. You know that you don't have to vote for 9 people. Look, out of 21 candidates, 13 of them say that they don't support the streetcar and they don't support the parking deal. 13 of them. You've got to sort through those 13, in my opinion, and find 5 of them that you like. Now, you have candidates on right now running who say they support responsible bidder. Look, responsible bidder, that is, listen to this, brought to you by Mallory, brought to you by Qualls, their PAC, and Rob Richardson are telling you that the responsible bidder ordinance is good for you. The only thing Rob Richardson is interested in doing, please listen, is him personally getting paid. Now that's what he's interested in. And that's okay for him to have that motivation. He's not a member of council. But he was able to influence Silbach and Simpson to pass this legislation on May the 1st through their committee with no discussion, and then the majority of council teed it up. Now what's happening is Chris Silbach is running through the African American community saying, I support you. I think you all are wonderful. You're great. When the families in the African American community are saying, wow, I see all this construction that's going on around me in my neighborhood. And I'm trying to figure out how my husband or my brother or my uncle or my son or my daughter can get a job making $30 an hour. But what they've done with responsible bidder is they now have taken it and herded all of the $3.5 billion in contracts towards the construction unions and not towards any open shops, which the open shops are where the majority of African American businesses are. I'm going to say that again. 7 Democrats have passed legislation called Responsible Bidder, driven by their lobbyist, Rob Richardson, who's on 12:30 a.m. The Buzz weekly, telling African Americans that the Responsible Bidder ordinance is good for them, and this is controlling the $3.5 billion of work coming through MSD, which is directly connected to your sewage bill that continues to go higher. And he has successfully driven all of the business towards the construction unions in the town in Cincinnati. Those construction unions, 95% of them, beyond the labor union, are white males, and they have locked out all of the open shops where you have white and black businesses that are not in unions. But in this town, the majority of African American construction businesses are not union. So the Responsible Bidder ordinance should say this, that Silbach put forward: I don't want African Americans to work. And you will continue to drive by and see those job sites not diverse under Responsible Bidder. It's just about them getting paid. And they'll run around and call anybody a Tea Party member who's there challenging them at the gate, saying that what you're doing is immoral, it's wrong, and it's discriminatory and not good for the citizens of Cincinnati. It's not good for those of you who live in Claremont County. It's not good for those who live in Butler County. It's not good for those who live in Hamilton County. It's not good for anybody who lives in the city of Norwood, St. Bernard, anybody that we sell water to and provide sewage to. The Responsible Bidder ordinance passed on May the 1st will increase your cost, and most importantly, will discriminate against 80% of the contractors out there who are trying to get the $3.5 billion of work. So while you sit at home registered to vote with no job, I want you to remember that it was this council that cut your opportunities to work in this town. My name is Christopher Smitherman. I'm a candidate for Cincinnati City Council. I am an independent, a moral person, an ethical person. I'm asking you for your vote again on November the 5th. Call us at 242-5400 and get involved in our campaign. Work a poll. It's not always about money. It's just come and give us some labor. Just driving over and getting a yard sign and putting it in your yard. While they're tearing our yard signs down all over the city, we keep putting them up. They can't stop the momentum. We'll see you on November 5th at 7:30 p.m. at the finish line. Smitherman, Smitherman, vote. Participate. Your vote counts. Reject the urban myth that your vote doesn't count. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you're hearing it or watching this show, and thank you so much for listening.